Hello ladies, gents, and everyones. It is Thursday, August 5th, and we're here to talk about this week's space and astronomy news. So let's start with where we left off last week, and that is the International Space Station. So when I made my video last Thursday, the Nauka module had just docked successfully with the International Space Station. The story doesn't end there though. So for one thing, contrary to early reports, they did in fact use the automatic docking system for the Nauka module. It was not manually docked. But then after docking, a couple hours after docking, the thrusters on the Nauka module started to fire uncontrollably. Now, as you can imagine, this is not good. In fact, they had to declare a spacecraft emergency for the International Space Station, which is a big deal. Now, the astronauts were safe the entire time, and if they hadn't been, there was a SpaceX capsule available docked to the station that they could have evacuated on, so no worries on that front. However, the thrusters from Nauka caused basically loss of attitude control on the International Space Station, which meant that it started to spin. In fact, it spun 540 degrees over the course of 44 minutes before NASA and Roscosmos could re-establish attitude control of the space station. Now, Roscosmos initially stated that the error was due to a short-term software failure, but there have also been indications that actually may have been some human error involved as well from one of the operators in ground control. Now, I want to emphasize that the issue was one of attitude control and not altitude control. That is to say, it was the orientation and not the orbit of the ISS that was really being affected by these thrusters. In fact, the orbit of the ISS is continually degrading over time because of atmospheric drag. And so, in fact, the ISS has boosters that they use to kind of continually re-up themselves about once a month or so. And in fact, they have one coming up now on August 19th where they will boost themselves slightly to a higher altitude in preparation for the Soyuz MS-19 mission. So the altitude was fine, it was an attitude issue. Now, because all of this craziness was happening on Thursday and the Boeing Starliner OFT-2 mission was planned for Friday, they decided to go ahead and postpone it to this week rather than send it up while things were still a little bit uncertain with the station. So that launch was then planned for this past Tuesday. However, in the lead up to the launch, they discovered an indication of an incorrect valve position. We don't like to have things not where they're supposed to be in a rocket launch, and so of course the launch had to be scrubbed. So they tried to postpone the launch to yesterday, to Wednesday, but they couldn't resolve the issue in time, and in fact now that launch has been postponed indefinitely, and in fact today they rolled the rocket back from the launch pad so that they can do further investigation and basically really figure out what's going on here before they launch this OFT-2 mission. And speaking of NASA's commercial space contracts, the U.S. Government Accountability Office announced late last week that they have denied the protest that Blue Origin and Dynetics put forth on the Human Landing System contract that NASA awarded to SpaceX back in April, if you recall. Now, this is the system that's actually going to take astronauts from their spacecraft down to the surface of the moon. SpaceX won with their Human Landing System Starship proposal. This was an almost $3 billion contract, so you can see why Blue Origin and Dynetics wanted to make sure that everything was done appropriately. Probably not a surprise that they ended up filing a protest with the GAO. However, rather bizarrely, Jeff Bezos published an open letter to NASA Administrator Bill Nelson early last week, basically saying that he would permanently waive $2 billion worth of payments from NASA, that Blue Origin would fund their own Pathfinder mission platform creation and development, and that they would change their contract to be a fixed firm price contract, which is basically a contract type that will protect the government from any cost overruns, meaning that Blue Origin would have to absorb any cost overruns. I honestly don't know what was up with this. I don't think the GAO considered it at all. They had probably already made their decision at this point. And I'm not even sure it's legal for them to consider this or for NASA to consider this. And in fact, when the GAO reviews a contract protest, they're not reviewing the merit of the award. They're just basically reviewing that the process was followed correctly. So I don't really know what was up with that letter, to be honest. But anyway, kind of the key point that lay at the heart of this protest was that NASA had said that they wanted to award 2 contracts. This is common practice, that there's basically competition between the 2 companies that get awarded, and so that if one of them has issues or falls behind schedule, there's kind of a backup. However, NASA ended up saying that they didn't have the funding to do this, and so they only made a single award to SpaceX. So the GAO basically found that this was in fact permissible because NASA had stated in the announcement that while they preferred to make 2 awards, they reserved the right to basically make 1 award, no awards at all, and that they were bound by the amount of funding that they had. So the GAO kind of gave the stamp to NASA's decision here. Now, while the contract was under protest, NASA and SpaceX couldn't work on it or do anything towards it. Now that the protest is complete, they can start going ahead, and in fact, NASA released a statement on Friday, basically saying that they are very excited to move forward with these Artemis missions and basically get cracking with SpaceX to put people back on the moon. Now, someone asked for an update on our favorite Mars helicopter, so let's talk about Ingenuity and what it's been up to. So back in May, the original 5-flight mission was completed, and Ingenuity's mission was extended into an operations demo that would kind of include more flights and riskier flights now that the kind of core mission had been satisfied. Since then, Ingenuity has made 6 more flights, the most recent one just being confirmed today. This included flight number 9, which was the longest flight by far at over 600 meters. It also reached a record ground speed of approximately 11 miles per hour during this flight. And most importantly, this flight was over really challenging terrain. So not only is this the kind of terrain that is really difficult for a rover to access, so it's important to make sure that we can fly over it, but Ingenuity actually has a built-in assumption that the ground beneath it is flat. This is a simplification that they made to help with the navigation system for what was supposed to be a rather limited operations demo. Now that they have the freedom to do this more extended mission, they can start to play with this, and they had to basically build in some corrections to help the helicopter navigate on ground that was not in fact flat, as it was kind of built to assume. And this worked great. It made it to the new airfield. This was a really successful flight, so it was really exciting. Also in flight 10, Ingenuity crossed the 1-mile mark for total miles flown. So basically this little helicopter has been wildly successful and it's still going, so really awesome. Now NASA has said that they plan for the flight operations to be wrapped up by the end of this month. This allows the rover team time to kind of wrap up their science and prepare for solar conjunction. So during solar conjunction, Earth and Mars are on opposite sides of the sun, and this basically blocks communication for about 2 weeks. So they really need to prepare and have all the equipment set up so that it can survive for 2 weeks on its own. As far as I know, there's no word on how many more flights they plan to do before the end of the month. They've been doing about a 2 to 3 week cadence for flights during this extended operations demo phase, so hopefully at least one more. So astronomers have been dealing with a problem of missing supernovae. Basically, the amount of supernovae that we see in the universe nearby to us, the late universe, is consistent with what we expect from theoretical models. However, the amount of supernovae that we see in the early universe is actually much less than is predicted by theoretical models. So this is a concern because it could indicate that our models are incorrect. Or, as astronomers suspect, it could be because those supernovae are there, but we just can't see them. So a new study published last month used infrared light to search for these supernovae in the early universe. So galaxies in the early universe are younger and dustier than modern nearby galaxies. Now, dust is opaque in optical light. So using something like the Hubble, which primarily observes in optical and UV light, these supernovae might not be visible. However, infrared light can basically see through this dust and see if there are supernovae there. So this team of astronomers took 2 years of data from the infrared Spitzer Space Telescope to search 40 dusty early galaxies for signs of supernovae, and they actually found 5 new supernovae. This actually indicates that up to half of the total supernovae in the universe are missed in optical-only surveys, and this number is statistically significant with the predictions from theoretical models. So this shores up our understanding of star formation, and it sets the stage for future infrared observatories that are coming online that can do even better and more comprehensive surveys in this space. The Spitzer telescope was retired in 2020. A really excellent piece of science, and well done to that team. Well, that's all I have for you this week. Remember to like, subscribe, and share if you like what I do here. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope I will see you again next week. Have a good one. Bye.